Anakin Skywalker was supposed to be the blade that cut the Republic open from within. Palpatine had seen it for years. The fear, the anger, the desperate love, all of it pointed to one future. Anakin would fall, the Jedi would shatter, and the Empire would rise on the ashes. But fate broke that design in a single moment. Before Palpatine could fully bind him, Anakin was gone. Whether lost in battle, swallowed by the Force, or taken by a twist of destiny, the result was the same. The Chancellor's perfect weapon vanished. And for the first time in decades, Darth Sidious faced something he hated most: uncertainty. He hid it well. In the Senate, he still looked calm. In public, he still played the wounded leader of a dying republic. But behind closed doors, his plans began to shake. Count Dooku was powerful, but he was not Anakin. He was older, colder, easier to replace, and far less suited to rule a new Sith age. Worse, Anakin's absence changed Obi-Wan Kenobi. Grief hardened him. Instead of chasing only battles, he began chasing answers. He looked back at every strange order, every hidden move, every political gain Palpatine had made during the war. Small patterns became a terrifying picture. Even the Jedi Council felt it. The dark side had not weakened. It had shifted. So Sidious moved faster. He pushed the war harder. He prepared the clones. He pressed Dooku toward riskier strikes. If he could not shape Anakin into Darth Vader, then he would burn the Republic without him. Yet, as Coruscant slept, Obi-Wan carried his findings to the council chamber, and Mace Windu finally saw the truth. The Sith Lord was closer than any of them feared. And Palpatine, sensing discovery at last, reached for Order 66 that very night. When Anakin Skywalker vanished from Coruscant, Palpatine lost the final piece of his perfect design. The Sith Lord had planned to turn fear into obedience, then use Anakin as the blade that would finish the Jedi. But without him at the Chancellor's side, the timing changed. Sidious could not wait for the trap to close slowly anymore. In the Jedi Temple, the mood had already shifted. Mace Windu was dead, yet his last move had left a wound in Palpatine's mask, and a deeper wound in his story. Questions spread through the council. Why had the Chancellor hidden his power? Why had clone deployments changed so suddenly? Why were Senate guards sealing off key records before dawn? Obi-Wan was still away. Yoda felt the dark side rising like smoke, and for the first time, several masters agreed on one thing: the Sith Lord behind the war was close. Palpatine saw the danger. If the Jedi searched one more day, they might uncover the truth, linking him to Dooku, the Separatists, and the clone command structure. So he chose speed over certainty. He sent coded orders to the clone commanders. He activated emergency powers across Coruscant. He told the Senate that Jedi extremists had struck at the heart of the Republic. Then came the final command. Order 66 moved through the galaxy like a death pulse. On distant worlds, clones turned their rifles on stunned Jedi generals. On Coruscant, gunships dropped toward the temple before sunrise. But one thing was missing from Palpatine's design. No Anakin led the attack. No fallen hero cut open the temple from within. The clones would have to break the Jedi head-on. That single change gave the Jedi time to raise their blades, seal the halls, and meet the purge awake before dawn fell. The temple alarms began to scream. Blue blades lit the dark. And as the first clone gunships descended through the smoke, the purge no longer looked certain. Obi-Wan Kenobi had faced pain before. He had lost Qui-Gon. He had endured war. He had watched the Republic decay one compromise at a time. But losing Anakin was different. This was not the death of a soldier. It was the silence left behind by a brother who should have lived. For a time, Obi-Wan disappeared into duty. He fought where the council sent him. He spoke little. He slept less. The clones under his command saw the change in him. Their general was still calm, still precise, but something colder now lived behind his eyes. Grief had not destroyed him. It had sharpened him. He began to study the war the way a hunter studies tracks. Every major battle seemed to help Chancellor Palpatine. Every emergency gave the Senate more reason to surrender power. Every Jedi failure fed public fear. The pattern was too clean, too deliberate. So Obi-Wan stopped asking what the Separatists wanted and started asking who benefited. He pulled old mission reports, security records, Senate decrees, and private messages from fallen Jedi. Piece by piece, the same shadow kept appearing. Dooku moved like an enemy, But someone in Coruscant moved the board. He brought his doubts to Yoda first. The Grand Master listened in silence. Then Obi-Wan stood before Mace Windu and laid out the chain. The clone army, the emergency powers, the endless war, the growing darkness around the Chancellor himself. Windu did not dismiss him. He only said, "If this is true, then the Sith have been ruling beside us." That night, Obi-Wan returned to the temple and found the halls uneasy, as if the Force itself was warning them. Across Coruscant, Palpatine felt the shift. His secret was no longer safe. Cornered Sith strike first, and Coruscant was about to feel the blow. Obi-Wan had finally found the trail. But Palpatine was already preparing to bury the truth under fire, fear, and blood. Without Anakin Skywalker, Darth Sidious was left with a weaker tool and a shrinking window. Count Dooku still commanded the Separatists, but he was never meant to survive the final stage of the Sith plan. Now Palpatine needed more from him, more fear, more destruction, more pressure on the Republic. And that made Dooku dangerous. Sidious began sending harsher orders through the shadows. Worlds once targeted for conquest were now marked for massacre. Supply routes became traps. Civilian centers were struck to spread panic through the Senate. Palpatine wanted the galaxy desperate enough to beg for absolute control. Dooku obeyed at first, but each order raised a new question. Why was victory no longer the goal? Why did every battle seem built to feed chaos instead of ending the war? The Count was no fool. He had betrayed the Jedi for power, but he had not surrendered his mind. He began to see the truth he had ignored for too long. Sidious did not want a new order ruled by two Sith. He wanted one throne, one master, and one final survivor. Anakin had been meant to take Dooku's place. Now that future was broken, and Sidious was using him harder because he had no better choice. That realization changed everything. Dooku tightened his grip on the Separatist Council and started holding back pieces of the war. He delayed fleets. He hid reserves. He even kept secrets from his own master. If Sidious meant to throw him away, then Dooku would not die blindly. But Palpatine felt the shift. His apprentice was hesitating. His war was slipping. His enemies were thinking. On Coruscant, the Jedi moved closer to the truth. In the shadows, Dooku made a choice that could shatter the Sith plan forever. He would not die. Sidious would pay. For the first time, the Sith were no longer moving as one. And while Dooku turned inward, Mace Windu prepared to strike at the darkness behind the Republic. Mace Windu had heard enough. Obi-Wan's evidence, the Council's growing fear, and the dark pressure over Coruscant all pointed to one truth. The Sith Lord was no distant enemy. He was here, hiding in plain sight, feeding on the Republic's fear while the Jedi fought and died across the stars. There was no time left for caution. Palpatine was accelerating the war. Dooku was acting strangely. The clones were in position. Every instinct in Windu warned that the next move would decide the fate of the galaxy. If the Jedi waited for perfect proof, they would lose everything. So Windu made his choice. He gathered the masters he trusted most and prepared to move on the Chancellor before dawn. No Senate debate, no public accusation, no delay. If Palpatine truly was Darth Sidious, then words would not stop him. Only speed would. Yoda remained uneasy, sensing that the trap was deeper than any of them understood. Obi-Wan insisted on joining the strike, but Windu refused. "Your role is not over," he told him. "If this fails, someone must carry the truth." Those words landed like a warning, not advice. Across the city, Palpatine stood in his office and felt the Jedi closing in. Without Anakin at his side, he had no perfect champion to intervene, no new Vader to break the order from within. That loss forced him toward a harsher answer. The Jedi would come for him as guardians of peace. He would turn them into traitors before the Senate ever heard their case. As temple lights dimmed and gunships moved through the night, both sides prepared for the same battle. By sunrise, either the Jedi would cut down the Sith, or the Republic would fall in a single stroke, and the Force itself seemed to hold its breath. Windu was about to face Sidious without Anakin changing the outcome. But Palpatine had already chosen his answer, and the clones were waiting for the order. Order 66 struck like a knife in the dark. Across the galaxy, clone troopers turned on their Jedi generals. On Felucia, on Cato Neimoidia, on Kashyyyk, blaster fire erupted without warning. Many Jedi fell in seconds. But on Coruscant, the story changed. Anakin Skywalker never marched on the Jedi Temple. No fallen chosen one led the assault. No lightsaber cut through the great halls before the clones arrived. That delay mattered. It gave the temple guards one gift time. Master Sindralig sealed the inner doors. Shakti rallied the knights. Jocasta Nu armed the younglings and sent them through hidden library routes. When the 501st attacked, they did not find panic. They found a fortress. The first wave of clones was torn apart in the entrance hall. Blue blaster bolts crashed into Jedi blades, then flew back into clone ranks. Turrets came alive. Barricades fell into place. Temple security codes were wiped before the soldiers could lock the complex down. All across Coruscant, survivors answered the signal. Jedi cut their way through alleys, through smoke, through clone checkpoints. Small groups reached the temple. Each one made the defense stronger. Each minute made Palpatine's plan weaker. Inside his office, Darth Sidious felt it at once. The fear was there. The deaths were many. But the clean purge he wanted was slipping away. Worse, the holo reports kept changing. The temple still stands, my lord. For the first time that night, Sidious was forced to move early. He rose from his chair, cloak trailing behind him, and called for every available shock troop. If the clones could not break the Jedi alone, then the Sith would finish it himself. And deep beneath the temple, a hidden beacon began to pulse. Someone was calling every surviving Jedi home before dawn came. The temple had not fallen. And now, Darth Sidious was coming himself. By dawn, Coruscant was no longer the proud heart of the Republic. It was a city under siege. Smoke curled between the towers. Gunships screamed over the sky lanes. Fires burned in the Senate District, the Works, and the plaza outside the Jedi Temple. What had begun as a purge was now open war. Yoda returned first. His shuttle slipped through traffic jams and wreckage, landing in the temple hangar under heavy fire. Obi-Wan arrived moments later from Utapau. Exhausted, wounded, but alive. There was no reunion, no time for grief. Only a mission. The Sith must fall today, Yoda said. Inside the temple, the surviving Jedi had turned every chamber into a defense line. Yet, even with their stand, they could not win a siege forever. Palpatine controlled the Senate, the courts, the HoloNet, and most of the clone army. If he lived through this day, the Republic would die by nightfall. So Yoda and Obi-Wan made their choice. They would strike at the source. A small force of Jedi Knights and Temple Guards broke out through the underlevels, moving through maintenance tunnels toward the Senate District. Above them, Coruscant shook with panic as rumors spread that the Jedi were fighting back. Some citizens hid. Some rioted. Some even attacked clone patrols, believing the Chancellor had staged the massacre himself. Palpatine saw the unrest and welcomed it. Chaos was his final weapon. From his office, Darth Sidious prepared a trap. Red guards sealed the chamber. Shock troopers flooded the surrounding levels. And in the dark heart of the building, the Sith Lord ignited his blade and waited. Obi-Wan felt the danger before they reached the lift. Yoda felt something worse, Anakin. Not dead. Not at the temple. Somewhere in the city, burning with conflict, fear, and rage. That changed everything. Because if Anakin had not chosen the temple, then Sidious still had one final card to play. The lift began to rise. And at the top of the Senate Tower, the dark side was waiting. At the top of the Senate Tower, the trap closed exactly as Darth Sidious had planned. Shock troopers sealed every corridor. Red guards stood like statues beside the great doors. The office windows looked out over a burning Capitol, and the city itself seemed to kneel before the dark side. But when the lift opened, Sidious saw something he had not expected. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood beside Yoda. Yes, yet behind them came temple guards, wounded Jedi Knights, and even clone deserters who had broken free of the Order in their minds. This was not a desperate charge. It was a final stand, and it carried the full weight of truth. Sidious moved first. His blade flashed red. Force lightning tore through the chamber and blasted two guards off their feet before anyone could shout a warning. The room exploded into motion. Blaster bolts streaked past polished columns. Jedi blades answered in blue and green fire. Obi-Wan drove toward the center, drawing the storm onto himself, while Yoda vanished into speed and shadow, striking from impossible angles. Sidious fought like a living nightmare. He was older than the Republic he had twisted, And in that chamber, he unleashed every secret he had hidden behind the face of Chancellor Palpatine. Outside, Coruscant cracked apart. News of the battle raced across the planet city. Senators fled their towers. Crowds filled the avenues. Some screamed that the Jedi were traitors. Others shouted back that the Chancellor was the real monster. Then the proof began to spread. Temple survivors broke into the HoloNet grid and released security files, private orders, and recordings from the dead masters in Palpatine's own office. The lie did not collapse all at once, but it started to bleed. Clone units hesitated. Local security forces stopped firing. Whole districts turned into chaos with no one left to command them. Inside the chamber, Obi-Wan finally understood the plan. Sidious was not trying to escape. He was buying time for fear to finish what the clones had started. Every minute of chaos below gave him another chance to turn the Senate, the Army, and Anakin Skywalker. So Obi-Wan changed tactics. He stopped pressing forward and locked the Sith Lord in a tight circle with the surviving Jedi. No path out, no path deeper. Yoda saw it at once. Together they forced Sidious away from the windows, away from his desk, and toward the center seal of the Grand Convocation Chamber, where there was nowhere left to hide. That was when Anakin arrived. He did not come as Vader. He came alone, robes burned, face gray with shock, moving like a man torn open by his own future. He had gone first to Padme, carrying Sidious's promise like poison in his hands. But as Coruscant burned, the truth had found him too. He had seen clone patrols gunning down Jedi in the streets. He had heard the Chancellor call it peace. And for the first time since Mace Windu's death, Anakin understood what he had helped unleash. Sidious smiled when he saw him. "You are late, my boy." The chamber fell silent for one terrible breath. Everything balanced on that moment. Obi-Wan could see the war inside Anakin's eyes. Yoda could feel the pain shaking through him. Sidious reached out with words instead of lightning. He promised power. He promised Padme's life. He promised an end to fear itself. Anakin stared at the red blade in Sidious's hand, then at the bodies on the floor, then at Obi-Wan, who said nothing at all. That silence mattered more than any speech. Slowly, Anakin stepped away from the Sith. Sidious attacked at once. Lightning crashed forward. Anakin caught it on his blade, screamed, and drove straight through the storm. Yoda struck high. Obi-Wan struck low. Anakin came through the center like a falling star. 3 blades met one. For one heartbeat, the dark side held. Then Sidious lost ground. Yoda cut through his guard. Obi-Wan shattered the floor beneath him. Anakin disarmed him with a two-handed strike that sent the red saber spinning into darkness. Sidious rose on pure hate, clawing at the air, but there was nowhere left to run. His own stolen power turned wild around him. It ripped the chamber apart. And in that storm of fire and broken stone, Yoda ended the Sith Lord at last. Silence followed, but victory did not feel clean. Sidious was dead before the Empire could be named, yet the Republic was already broken. The Senate was leaderless. The clone army was shattered. The Jedi had survived, but not enough to restore what had fallen. And Anakin, the man who could have saved everything sooner, could not bear the ruins around him. Before Padme, before Obi-Wan, before the Order, he turned and walked away into the smoke. The Sith were gone. The Empire was unborn. But the Chosen One was lost to the galaxy all the same. And as Coruscant began to rebuild, a far greater question remained: who would lead the broken future now?